Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News, an Indian perspective on All India Radio. This is R.S. Raghu and with me is Vaibhav Jyotsna Srivastav, bringing glimpses of major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. As the world fights the COVID-19 pandemic, we begin with a message of caution to stay safe and protected by following these three simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain social distancing, focus on hand and face hygiene. The headlines. Asia's biggest aero show, Aero India, kicks off in Bengaluru. India to host Indian Ocean Region Defence Ministers Conclave on Thursday. New Delhi wants Twitter to comply with its order to remove obnoxious and malicious contents creating tension among society. India becomes fastest country in the world to administer 4 million COVID-19 vaccines. US President Joe Biden signs orders on review of immigration policy. United Nations says COVID-19 impact exposes millions to the risk of trafficking. 36 US Congress members asked Pakistan to review the acquittal of Omar Sheikh, the mastermind behind the killing of Daniel Pearl. And in sports, Daniil Medvedev confirms Russia's position in the ATP Cup semi-finals. Aero India, Asia's biggest show, was inaugurated by Defence Minister of India, Mr. Rajnath Singh, in Bengaluru today. Speaking at the inaugural function, the Defence Minister pointed out at India's growing presence in the area of designing and developing indigenous weapon systems and platforms for our defence forces. He said India offers a unique opportunity in defence and aerospace manufacturing.
India today offers a unique opportunity in defence and aerospace manufacturing. This opportunity comes as a sangam of rising demand, greater innovation, conducive policy and maturing ecosystem in defence and aerospace manufacturing sector.
The Defence Minister called upon investors to tie up with Indian firms to launch a manufacturing facility in India. Mr. Singh said that India is strong enough to protect its territorial integrity and no attempts to change the status quo at the borders will be tolerated. He made it clear that a befitting reply will be given to those involved in state-sponsored terrorism. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said in a tweet that India offers unlimited potential in defence and aerospace. He said Aero India is a wonderful platform for collaborations in these areas. He said the government of India has brought futuristic reforms in these sectors, which will add impetus to our quest to become Atmanirbhar. More from our correspondent.
The 3 days event showcased India's prowess in defense production, indigenization of defense equipment and platform, has provided an opportunity for partnership between countries and vendors in the area of defense. The exhibition that is part of the event has showcased Indian ventures in the defense sector. The spectacular flypast by Indian-born light combat aircraft Tejas, advanced light helicopter Dhruv, light combat helicopter and utility helicopters left the audience spellbound. The foreign-made Rafale and BIB long-range bomber of US took part in the flypast. Jaguars, Hawk and HTT-40 trainer aircrafts too were part of the flypast. AWACS Netra, the eye in the sky, too captivated the audience. After the inaugural, the Raksha Mantri inaugurated Indian Pavilion in the show. Sudhindra, AIR News, Bengaluru.
India will host Indian Ocean Region IOR Defence Ministers Conclave tomorrow on the sidelines of Aero India 2021. The broad theme of the conclave is enhanced peace, security and cooperation in the Indian Ocean. The conclave is an initiative to promote dialogue in an institutional, economic and cooperative environment that can foster the development of peace, stability and prosperity in the Indian Ocean region. It will also address information sharing towards increased maritime awareness, maritime surveillance and cooperation. Humanitarian assistance and disaster relief HADR, marine pollution response activities, development of technologies and capabilities for harnessing marine resources are among other aspects.
India's trajectory of leaping across landmarks in its fight against the global pandemic continues. In a significant achievement, India has become the fastest country in the world to reach the 4 million COVID-19 vaccination mark. The country has achieved this feat in just 18 days. As on the 1st of February, India was among the top 5 countries in terms of the number of COVID-19 vaccine doses administered to the people. India continues to undertake its vaccination drive at a fast pace. In another development, Andaman and Nicobar Islands has become the first state or union territory in the country to become COVID-19 free, with active cases falling to zero in the islands. The Government of India has categorically stated that the Parliament has passed reformist legislations relating to the agriculture sector after a full debate and discussion. It has urged people to ascertain facts and have a proper understanding of the issues at hand before rushing to comment on such matters. On recent comments by some foreign individuals and entities on the farmer protests, the External Affairs Ministry said in a statement that these reforms give expanded market access and provide greater flexibility to farmers. The laws also pave the way for economically and ecologically sustainable farming. The ministry emphasized that these protests must be seen in the context of India's democratic ethos and polity and the efforts of the government and the concerned farmer groups to resolve the impasse. External Affairs Ministry said the temptation of sensationalist social media hashtags and comments, especially when resorted to by celebrities and others, is neither accurate nor responsible.
The External Affairs Ministry said in a statement that a very small section of farmers in parts of India has some reservations about these reforms. Respecting the sentiments of the protesters, the government has initiated a series of talks with their representatives. Union ministers have been part of the negotiations and 11 rounds of talks have already been held. The government has even offered to keep the laws on hold, an offer iterated by no less than Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The ministry has termed it unfortunate that vested interest groups are trying to enforce their agenda on these protests and derail them as witnessed on 26th of January. It said some of these vested interest groups have also tried to mobilize international support against India. Instigated by such fringe elements, Mahatma Gandhi statues have been desecrated in parts of the world. The ministry called it extremely disturbing for India and for civilized society everywhere. It also added that Indian police forces have handled these protests with utmost restraint and hundreds of men and women serving in police have been physically attacked and in some cases stabbed and seriously wounded. With Anand Kumar, Suparna Saikia, AIR News, Delhi.
The Government of India has warned that Twitter may face action if it does not comply with its orders, stressing that the social media house unilaterally unblocked accounts and tweets linked to an objectionable hashtag related to the farmers' protest despite its order. The Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology had earlier issued a notice to Twitter to comply with its order to remove obnoxious and malicious contents and accounts related to farmers' issue. It said the contents were created with malified intentions to inflame passions, hatred, and are factually incorrect. Government in a statement said this is a motivated campaign to create tension among society on unsubstantiated grounds and incitement is not freedom of speech. It is a threat to law and order. The statement said Twitter is an intermediary and it is obliged to obey directions of government and it cannot assume the role of court and justify non-compliance. India has taken up the matter of killing of over 200 Indian fishermen in the Indian Ocean by the Sri Lankan Navy in the most stringent manner. Responding to the issue during 0 hour in the upper house of the Parliament, Rajya Sabha today, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has said that such incidents are unacceptable.
The regime in Myanmar, headed by the army, has announced a new State Administrative Council. The council, headed by the Army Chief General Min Aung Hlaing, has 11 members, out of which 8 are from the military. Earlier, addressing the meeting of the Union Government on yesterday, General Min Aung Hlaing said that election matters and COVID-19 prevention and containment will be prioritized. He reiterated that the voting frauds will be exposed. In a statement released on the official channel, the military government announced that the Union Election Commission will be reconstituted for implementing the duties and the functions. Meanwhile, the United Nations Security Council held closed consultations to arrive at a consensus statement on Myanmar developments. According to the UN press briefing, the special envoy of the Secretary-General, Christine Schreiner Bergner, urged the council members to send a clear signal in support of democracy in Myanmar. The G7 countries have also condemned the military coup in Myanmar. The Myanmar police have filed a case against the deposed head of the government, Aung San Suu Kyi, for illegally importing communications equipment. The police told the court that 6 walkie-talkies were found in search of her home in Nay Pyi Do. These equipment were imported and used illegally, said the police. She will be detained till February the 15th for investigations. Along with Aung San Suu Kyi, the former president of Myanmar, Win Myint, has also been charged with violating rules banning people's gathering during the corona pandemic.
World Health Organization investigators on Wednesday visited Wuhan Institute of Virology, WIV, which has been at the center of many theories about the origins of the coronavirus, which first emerged in the Chinese city of Wuhan at the end of 2019. WHO team member Peter Daszak said on Twitter that they had an extremely important meeting with a prominent virologist, Dr. Shi Zhengli, also known as China's Batwoman, for her coronavirus research, who was among the first to isolate the novel coronavirus last year that causes COVID-19. Mr. Daszak said they had frank and open discussion with the members and key questions were asked and answered. Moving on to coronavirus updates, in Japan, the government has extended the coronavirus state of emergency until March the 7th. The state of emergency was originally set to expire on Sunday. Singapore has become the first country in Asia to approve Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine. It expects to receive the first shipment of the Moderna shots around March, adding to its stock of Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine approved in December. The country has already started its COVID-19 immunization program to the wider population. New Zealand's medicines regulators has approved the use of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine.
Pakistan's Supreme Court has ordered the release from prison of a British-born militant who had been convicted in the kidnapping and murder of US journalist Daniel Pearl. The court has recommended that Ahmad Omar Saeed Sheikh be transferred to a government safe house as a stepping stone to his full release. Sheikh was acquitted by a panel of 3 judges last week. Meanwhile, 36 members of the US Congress have issued a letter to Pakistan's ambassador to the United States urging the country to undertake a full review of acquittal of the accused. Last week, Secretary of State Antony Blinken had said that Washington is prepared to prosecute the acquitted militant in the United States for his horrific crimes. Saudi Arabia has suspended entry of people from 20 countries including India, US, UK, Japan and UAE in a bid to contain the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. Diplomats, Saudi citizens and medical professionals are exempted from the entry ban. The suspension, which begins from Wednesday, includes travelers who transited through the banned countries within the 14 days prior to their journey to the country. This is All India Radio, giving you the world news.
All India Radio presents World News. News and views from across the globe. What happened and what is up next? The newsmakers and the highlights of the day. From 10:30 to 11 p.m. every night on 100.1 FM, All India Radio.
In our Hotspots segment, we bring you today the views of experts and top officials from the Government of India on the Budget 2021 presented on Monday by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Let us take a listen.
Hello and welcome to this special program on the Union Budget 2021. We are now joined by Dr. Rajiv Kumar, Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog. Dr. Rajiv Kumar, almost 2 decades back, the focus was on highways, and we know that Atal Bihari ji focused on the Golden Quadrilateral. In budget announcement, a record allocation of more than 1,18,000 crore rupees for the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. Would you say that it's again a renewed focus on highways and roads?
Well, a continued focus is a better way of putting it, simply because this government, since it has come into office, has continued the thrust which Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji gave to the construction of national highways and roadways, and also to the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. The new emphasis is that along with the roadways, which have got 1,08,000 crore for capital investment, you've also got 1,07,000 crore for railway infrastructure, which is unprecedented. and which will mean that you will get a new sort of modernized railway system for a new India by 2030, whether it is in terms of, high-speed trains or better coaches or, the electrification of all broad gauge tracks. So that's the greater part. And similarly, as you know that we have the flagship corridors and expressways which will be announced for the, for the national highways, as also for the railways, the freight corridors which will be completed by December of 2022. They will provide a huge fillip to the transport and connectivity infrastructure. And then the urban infrastructure. The two new schemes of Metro Light and Metro New, which will be more cost effective, which are being introduced. All of that together means that the physical infrastructure has remained the focus and will continue to be the focus so that the country can approach towards world-class physical infrastructure in the coming years.
Thank you so much for joining us. And now in the studios, we are joined by Mr. P.C. Modi, the chairman of the Central Board of Direct Taxes. And we also have with us Shri Ajit Kumar, the chairman of CBIC. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Mr. Modi, if I can begin with you, it's often said that no news is good news. So in that sense, people were probably expecting a huge burden from the taxation point of view that, whatever you might call it, a COVID tax or cess or anything. But, surprisingly, there was no new additional burden on the tax front.
Certainly,
what would you say?
Certainly. I think that fear of the taxpayers was misplaced, I suppose.
And pleasantly so.
And pleasantly so. But what is more important is that despite the pandemic and despite the difficult times, an effort has been to kind of provide much efficient and effective tax administration, something which the taxpayer feels motivated to discharge his tax obligations voluntarily.
And Mr. Ajit Kumar, from the taxation perspective, how do you see it?
I think it's a very positive and a very growth-oriented budget. We are taking forward the Prime Minister's call for Atmanirbhar Bharat. What we are trying to ensure is that our industry, which had suffered a bit during this pandemic time, we try to protect those factories or industries where we can start manufacturing value-added products. So allowing imports of finished products or parts to come in. We have tried to raise duty on those where our own small sector MSMEs are capable of manufacturing these goods, so that due to this protection, they start manufacturing these goods within India.
You want to help them flourish.
Help them. And wherever raw materials are required, we have reduced the rates because basic raw materials can come in and our industry can start growing. During the pandemic, we found that we were dependent on a certain countries alone. That was possible in a time when things were where the industry was doing well. But then that was an eye-opener to us.
Even the PPE kits or the ventilators.
Correct. Those are some of the examples that we had to suddenly rush in. And credit goes to our entrepreneurs, to our manufacturers, that they rose to the challenge. And we said, why not? If we give them the right atmosphere and we give them the protection they need, they can do wonders, and they have done it.
But Atmanirbhar Bharat, many times, people, it's kind of a misnomer. People tend to see that as if it is a kind of a protectionist move towards the Indian economy and we won't, let foreign players come. It is actually not that.
No, it is not that at all. We are calibrating the needs of the country, and wherever we need inputs, we are allowing them to come in. But we want to ensure that the country is able to manufacture quality products, make champion sectors, and they are able to export and bring more revenue to the nation.
And now let's go across the Chief Economic Advisor, K.V. Subramanian. For our listeners of All India Radio, tell us, what is your overall assessment of budget proposal?
I think that this budget is a dream budget. I'll tell you why I think that is the case. Firstly, the budget came against the backdrop of a once-in-a-century pandemic that India has really handled it well, and there's a V-shaped recovery that is going on. This budget has taken significant steps to provide fillip to that recovery so that in the coming financial year, India can grow really well at least 10.5 to 11% in real terms, number one. But at the same time, the budget, having been the first budget of this decade, has also laid important foundation for the Indian economy to grow at high growth rates of 8% plus over this decade. It has taken significant steps in that direction. Let me list out what are the key areas that leads me to think that this is such a dream budget. Firstly, if you look at healthcare spending, there's been an increase of almost 140% in the expenditure for health. Do remember that health is a state subject, and so 2/3 of healthcare spending by the government comes from state government. So of the 1/3 part, there's been a huge increase from the center, almost 2.5 lakh crores provided for healthcare. And this has been provided both for preventive and curative healthcare because the preventive part comes from sanitation, from clean drinking water, which have been provided for, apart from the curative part as well, where the 65,000 crores approximately the Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana has been provided for. So that's point number one, healthcare. The second related to that is the provision for vaccination, 35,000 crores. And as I've said in the last couple of days, vaccination is also a vaccine for the economy because it can really bring people back into economic activities, especially in the service sector. The second important part is the financial sector. Even entering into COVID, the Indian financial sector was facing challenges. There have been several steps that have been taken in the financial sector. The first is the creation of the bad bank in the private sector so that it can be effective. The proposal to divest 2 public sector banks and 1 general insurance company, the proposal to set up development financial institutions within the public sector and to enable development financial institutions in the private sector that infrastructure financing can be provided for. And last but not the least, the insurance FDI limit actually for the insurance sector being raised from 49% to 74% with necessary safeguards about residents being the managers on the board, etc. So the second key part is financial sector. The third is the infrastructure, and as our listeners would certainly appreciate, the infrastructure is really critical, and here roads, railways and power has been emphasized significantly. A 32% increase in infrastructure on a significantly higher outlay this year itself has been provided for. So when you put this all together, also add in the realistic estimates and the transparent budgeting that has been done, I think, it all amounts to a dream budget.
Right, Mr. Subramaniam, thank you so much for joining us. And now let's go across to Dr. V.K. Paul, member of Niti Aayog. With you, we will surely, focus on the health sector. We have seen how the provisions have been made targeting the health sector, 35,000 crore rupees for the COVID-19 vaccine. What can the people of this country expect to get free vaccination over a period of time?
This is a budget which will be going down in the history as a game changer for the health sector because a big new beginning has been made. And the trend of relatively static or slowly incrementally increasing health budgets is now, that trend has been changed to a deep inputs into the budget to raise its trajectory to a totally new level. And that is what is reflected in the budget. Now, the point about the vaccination part of the budget is, of course, very reassuring, first and foremost, and it demonstrates the clear priority that the government is attaching to getting the vaccine to maximum number of people, and also to make sure that resources will not be a limiting factor for ensuring this such an access. So this is, a fulfillment of the promise which the government had made and repeatedly made that the resources will not come in the way of vaccine availability to the people of India, and that promise has been fulfilled by the finance minister. How we do it is just wait to see, but with this kind of a resource being available, the access to vaccine, and very importantly, as the Chief Economic Advisor was saying, vaccination should not only be seen as saving lives, but also re-energizing fully the economic wheels and the social well-being of the nation.
But Dr. Paul, I'm sure you will agree that, we have never focused on the health sector as such, if we were to see our spending as a percentage of the GDP. But post-COVID, apart from the vaccination thing, post-COVID, do you think now the focus will come back again on the healthcare sector, whether it is primary, secondary or tertiary healthcare in the entire country?
I think you can clearly notice that the focus on health is now central to the government's overall agenda for health, and to make health of the people holistic health, preventive, curative, rehabilitative, all facets of health get the required resources from the state. The public spending will match the expectations of the people in every facet. And therefore, you can clearly see this time around that push is visible, and this push is there to speak for itself.
We are now joined by the Secretary General of FICCI, Mr. Dilip Shenoy. Mr. Shenoy, what would you say? We are talking about the fiscal deficit, 9.5% for the current year and 6.8% for the next year. So how easy would it be to bring it down by almost, say, 50% from 9.5 to 6.8?
No, you see, you also have to remember that we are in a V-shaped recovery. So if you look at the revenue buoyancy in the first quarter of next year compared to the minus 23% in the first quarter of this year, the numbers are going to speak for themselves. So you're going to see that. Second is also because the idea of presenting, and the Prime Minister's idea and the Finance Minister's idea of actually getting the budget presented and getting the committees to meet and getting the budget passed very quickly is to start expenditure on 1st April. So that is a point where a lot of people forget. Earlier, it used to take a lot of time to get the expenditure going and to go. Now it's going to happen from 1st April. And very interesting that if you look at the PLI scheme, the scheme is already budgeted here, but all the action and the things will be finished by March. So you'll actually see execution of that and you'll see things happening. Most of the infrastructure schemes, they have been done in the National Infrastructure Pipeline. They've been identified. There's the dashboard going on there. So there's a full thing that there will be a revenue increase and, that the fiscal deficit could be brought down there. But given the fact we are all talking in the context that the vaccination will be a success, there will be no second round of kind of a pandemic. There are a lot of things there. But, again, the Finance Minister out of a capital budget has kept 44,000 crores with herself to say that we will use it to do other things. So there is very interesting thing to this budget that should there be something there, we are prepared for it financially. And also mentioned there that she's going to look at ways to incentivize the states to actually invest here. So that's the other thing that they're looking at.
The UN Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, has said that COVID-19 impact exposes millions to the risk of trafficking. UNODC says that migrants and people without jobs were among the groups most targeted by human traffickers. It warned that the economic fallout and job losses due to the coronavirus pandemic have exposed millions more to the risk. U.S. President Joe Biden has ordered a review of asylum processing at the U.S.-Mexico border and the immigration system. Biden also created a task force to reunite migrant families who were separated at the border by Trump's 2018 zero-tolerance strategy. Meanwhile, the U.S. government has promised undocumented migrants the same access to COVID-19 vaccines as other civilians. It said that inoculation centers would be immigration enforcement-free zones.
Now let us take a look at the major development around the world as reported in foreign press. Wall Street Journal has reported that SpaceX Starship prototype crash-landed in an explosive fireball. Sputnik News reported that New START agreement has been extended up to February 2026. The Sydney Morning Herald writes that Australian Liberal and Labour senators have accused the Chinese Communist Party of unspeakable human rights abuses in Uyghur detention camps in China. Moving on to sports, in tennis, Daniil Medvedev confirmed Russia's position in the ATP Cup semi-finals with a 6-2, 6-4 victory against Kei Nishikori. In cricket, India's wicketkeeper batsman Rishabh Pant has been nominated for the ICC Men's Player of the Month award along with England skipper Joe Root and Ireland's Paul Stirling.
A quick look at the headlines once again. Asia's biggest aero show, Aero India, kicks off in Bangalore. India hosts Indian Ocean Region Defence Ministers Conclave on Thursday. New Delhi wants Twitter to comply with its orders to remove obnoxious and malicious contents, creating tension among society. India becomes the fastest country in the world to administer 4 million COVID-19 vaccines. US President Joe Biden signs orders on review of immigration policy. United Nations says COVID-19 impact exposes millions to the risk of trafficking. 36 US Congress members ask Pakistan to review the acquittal of Omar Sheikh, the mastermind behind the killing of Daniel Pearl. And in sports, Daniil Medvedev confirms Russia's position in the ATP Cup semi-finals. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from Germany. And with that, we end this bulletin. See you at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.